The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello there everyone, welcome to Disability Webinars. This is the first in a series of 5. There's a few more I'm waiting for to sign on, so we'll kind of hang on a minute or two just to let them log in and get comfortable. For those of you that haven't been on a webinar before, obviously hopefully you can see the slide, the title slide there in front of you, and can hear me talking. So all that hopefully is well and good. If you all just write the location that you're in on the chat box, you should be able to see a little chat box on the tools that you've got. So if you all just sort of trial that out and let me know where you're actually watching from, and we can just check the technology is working and get a view of the range of different people that are watching as well. So we've got someone at Veronica in Camberley in Surrey. Hi there, Veronica. Hopefully the other guys have found the chat box that I'm referring to. I believe it's on your right hand side, and you should be able to click in and type the way you would on Facebook or MSN to actually write what you want to say. Yep, we've got Worksop in Nottinghamshire. Hello, Andrina. We've got David Burrows, a former colleague of mine at Scope. Good to see you, David. Hope you're doing well. Just give it another little while to make sure the rest are typing in. We've got Samia in Walthamstow. That's about a mile away. I'm down in Stamford Hill, so it's good to meet you. Got Laura from Reading. Hello, Laura. Used to play wheelchair football with Laura's son. So I know, Laura, I haven't seen you for a while, so I hope you and the family are good. So I think that's probably everyone. We've got Stacey from Chester. Hi, Stacey. We met at the Jennifer Trust conference, so it's good to see some familiar faces as well. So yeah, so there's one or two that might be joining. So we'll make a start anyway, and they can sort of sign. But yeah, essentially you can see there's that chat box. So if you have any questions during the sort of 40-minute session, we've got Jasmia from St Ives in Cambridgeshire. Hello, Jazz. But yeah, so I say if you have any questions, fire them off. I'll either answer them in the moment as I'm going through the presentation, or what I might do is I've left 15 minutes or so at the end for a question and answer, and I think it might be easier to go through all the slides first, and then obviously if you have any particular questions we can deal with those at the end as well. So we'll crack on, I think. So as I say, welcome to the webinar. This is for parents and guardians to a disabled young person. So we'll go into the aims and objectives, but broadly I'm going to be running 5 of these webinars, and it sort of mixes up my personal experience of being disabled since birth, but also then in a kind of more professional way from the things I learned at Scope and other bits and bobs I've done. But I say this is more aimed towards parents and guardians, but I think everyone can take something away from it. Also, a quick shout out to the top right-hand side of the slide, Flourish and Future Fundraising. David, who's signed in, will know these guys. I used to work with them at Scope, and they've kindly sponsored this series, which has been brilliant because it's enabled me to deliver it to you guys for free. So a big shout out and a big thank you to them as well. So we'll just change the slide. So an introduction, a nice big cheesy picture of me there. So for those of you that haven't met me or seen any of the blogs and things I do, that's who I am, who's talking through this computer to you. As I sort of mentioned before, the format is that you're going to see what's on my screen and hear me talking over the top of it. But you won't actually see a live video of me because the software won't be able to cope with that download capacity. So yep, personal experiences of mine are that I have spinal muscular atrophy, which is SMA, which means that since birth I've had this genetic disability. I've used a wheelchair since I was 3. I have 24-hour care. So obviously it says that I live independently in London, but that means I have a full team of carers to support that. I went to university and got a degree in economics and a master's degree in marketing. For those of you that know me and know my blog, I have a pretty hectic social life, and a world traveller, and yeah, lots more cool plans for life. So that's a kind of more personal side to who I am. Professionally, did sort of bits and bobs of work experience as one does as a teenager and through uni, just in like estate agents and a civil service summer placement, just to sort of get stuff on my CV. But my first paid job was actually at Scope about a week after I finished at uni. I started off in HR and then moved into fundraising, which was my day job. But through that, I learned how to be a trainer and a campaigner. I did lots of PR and media. Part of my more recent job was research as well. So that sort of enabled me to understand disability in a bigger picture way. But done some freelance journalism for Disability Now. Personalisation, which for those of you who don't know, is all about care budgets. So really how I have a budget personally to pay for my carers. There's a lot of different ways of doing that, and I've worked with Hackney Council as a consultant on that. And then a lot of around social media and new media. So in the present day, I'm running my own social enterprise, which is aiming to change the world for disabled people. I'm mainly using social and new media, such as the webinars that we've got happening at the moment. And really, combining all of the above together. So as you hopefully saw when you signed up for this, that the outcomes which I hope that you take away really are understanding the importance of a child's first. So that's something I relate to, that my first day at nursery and first day at school and sort of other first, like going to a friend's party and all that sort of stuff. It's the same importance as it is for anyone, but as you all know, sort of having signed up and having a relation to a disabled person, that they can be a bit more complex. So we're going to explore sort of inclusion, which I think everyone would agree is the main aim when you're disabled, is to still be included in society. But then that against having the right support in place. So when you need particular technology or people to enable you, sometimes inclusion is a little bit more difficult. So we can look at that. And I think the key to all of this really is that I'm sharing a bit of my personal story and trying to create a bit of discussion. I don't know if you can hear I've turned my phone off and I've turned everything else off in the house, but there's a siren going past. But hopefully we won't have any riots tonight. So touch wood, it's just the normal London buzz. As I was saying, we'll sort of, it's for me to create a discussion with you guys, and so that you can almost look at your own personal circumstances and relate it to that part of your world. And what I'm doing is just trying to create a discussion and give some tips and hints towards that, I suppose. So yeah, also we look at when and how to seek expert help and assistive equipment, and then a realisation that you're not alone and that your child can excel and that you can enable that. So they're broadly the different things that are going on. Rob's just asking if there's a hashtag for the webinar. So those of you who are on Twitter, well, the general hashtag is disability webinar. So if you want to talk about the fact you're on here and share it with your Twitter followers, then it's hashtag disability webinar. So what we're going to cover, there's the exclusive world premiere of the diamond theory. Basically, I'll explain and show you the diagram in a minute, but having been blogging on my site and doing videos and articles and various other bits and bobs, I've been trying to think of a way to explain what the point of all of that, so a broader way of understanding what I'm trying to communicate. And then we'll look at how the theory works and applies to this particular topic, which is obviously a parent to a disabled child. Then consider the barriers that are relevant to you, and then to look at finding some solutions and strategies for education and socialising, and then there'll be question and answer sessions at the end. So the diamond theory. You are the first people to really see this, and I will say that the diagram is a bit of a rubbish attempt that I've done on paint, and it's going to actually end up being done by a graphic designer to go in the ebook that I'm writing. So it looks a bit rubbish, but it still gives you a general idea of what I'm trying to say. And also the left hand side, where it's the bar that goes up saying funding, that's probably going to be removed. But broadly, if you look on the left, first of all, you can see from bottom to top there's the actual sort of life stages. So there's parents of a disabled young person, which is where we are now. There's the teenage years. Then there's an independent living. So for many, that's sort of coming out of school around the age of 18, anywhere 18 to 25, I guess. But that sort of transition into independent living. But obviously there may be, in the later webinars I run, people that haven't managed to sort of achieve all of those goals in that area, and they may be older and looking to do that. And then finally there's the sort of life fulfillment and adventure, which is around leisure, travel and adventure, and career progression. But really, if you look at that central diagram, as I've called the diamond, it has the life stages and almost a variety of different goals, and each goal you build on. So if you're probably, I would say I'm somewhere near the top part, because I have obviously grown up and I've gone to school and I've gone to uni, and I think I've got most of those middle bits sorted in independent living, and I'm doing my best to get more leisure and travel. But if any one of those things below was to be taken away, such as if my personal care ended, or I didn't have my house, then the rest would tumble. So it's kind of life stages and different goals to try and get to the top part of that diamond. Now that's a really, really quick explanation, and I'm going to actually be writing this all up properly and putting it on my website for free so that anyone can understand this is sort of broadly what I'm trying to explain. And then on the right, you've got the segments, which is just that there's really thirds. So the lower third are the foundations, the middle third are the building blocks, and the upper third would be that sort of new horizons. And then the philosophy is how you kind of use the diamond. So you would sort of understand where you are, as I've just explained, so I can identify where I am. You then would set yourself goals, but aspirational goals, because I think quite often for disabled people there's a bit of a sort of thought process that you've done well if you've gone to school, and you've done well if you're doing some form of job, when actually you should aspire to do something great, and it doesn't matter that you have a disability. But then obviously once you set that goal, you have to identify the different barriers that are in the way, and those barriers could partly be your own disability and your own limitations, or they could be external limitations, such as access to buildings, or attitudes of people, or sort of policies, such as when you go for a job, the different employment policies that they have. And it's just good to broadly understand all those different barriers that might be in the way. And then you use the tools, which is at the bottom right, which I've sort of tried to categorize a little bit with mindset, which I honestly think is actually the most important thing. If you have the right mindset, then the rest is actually doable, even if it takes time. Knowledge, which talks about the barriers we've just mentioned, but also the sort of information that you need to access and the source of it, which then sort of feeds into people and technology. So, if a barrier is maybe funding, which is the last tool, to be able to get a new hoist or to have support at school, then you need to have the knowledge and the sort of information of who to ask for where to get the funding and where to get the hoist. So they all kind of feed off each other. There's no one quick way of explaining that, but hopefully I've done my best. Essentially you can read the actual book when it's all written, and I've thought it through a bit more, but it gives a nice starting point really to understand my sort of ethos around life and being disabled, and then how that leads into this particular webinar, which we're doing at the moment. So what I thought we would do, if we go back to that, if you look at the parents of a disabled young person, I've split it into two life stages, which is social inclusion and education. And obviously the point of this being more aimed at parents is when you're anything up to 10 or maybe even 15, you're less likely as a disabled person to be aware of all this and making these decisions. So it's actually a lot more on the parent to sort of start the chapters off and try and get the inclusion sorted and the right support sorted themselves. And so, we can break it into those two broader parts, which I think education is about, whether it's mainstream school or special schools, and social inclusion is really just about facilitating and enable the child to be able to, go to local school parties, friends parties, or the local fete, or whatever it might be. So they're the two areas we can break it down into. So now it's your turn. I used to do a lot of training in a room with people, and it's good because you can see their face and make sure they're still enthralled by what I'm saying, whereas I can't see any of your face at the moment. So I'm going to have to assume you're all having a whale of a time and hanging on my every word. But equally, just to keep you a little bit more energised and to get you to think about the things I'm trying to talk about, really. In the chat box, which a few of you have already written where you're actually dialing in from, I want you to write some of the barriers that relate to probably your child, but I think some of the people on the webinar are maybe sort of older disabled people, and others are just have a general interest. But try and sort of think of maybe an impairment if you're not dialing in for your particular child. Think about the barriers that would stop them from accessing the local school, and also accessing a local social setting. So I'm going to mute myself for a few minutes, right, 2 or 3 minutes, and then I want you all just to list first of all those three to education, just the three to education, and then I'll share out some of the ones that are coming through. Right, I'm back on. There's loads and loads of answers coming through in a really, really positive way. So what I'm going to do, I think, is read through all of them. As you can see on the slide that's up at the bottom of it, the idea is to then consider the philosophy and the resources. So I'll go back in a minute so you can see what they were and think about how you'd utilise them and remove the barriers. So obviously in the time frame that we've got, we're not going to be able to go through every single one and always find a strategy to solve it. And it's actually bringing back so many memories reading all these through, because they're all the different things that I had to do with at one point or another. And I think I'm trying to be careful not to flippantly say, oh, I'll do this and do that and it'll be fine, because I do know that, some of the things maybe were never, couldn't be overcome, but there was just a different way of doing it. And other things were possible to overcome, but did take some time to get there. So I just want to clarify that my input is to try and give that inspiration that it's all very possible, and a sort of format of trying to do that. But I'm not going to be naive enough to sit here and say, oh yeah, this is the answer to that problem, this is the answer to that problem. So I'll read through. You can start typing them now. Thank you for writing them up and sharing them. So starting from the top, we've got physical support, assistance with toileting, meal times, access to suitable chairs and tables. So really that, I guess, is around having, if we think about, and I'll take this back slide as well. There we go. So yeah, I think that probably the sort of tools that would be to overcome the support would be funding for a personal assistant or a teaching assistant, I guess I call it, school, that would do all of those things. And the access to suitable chairs and tables would probably be more around a meeting and a bit of a discussion between the relevant people at the school of what, other types of seating are available, maybe putting in social worker or occupational therapist. And I think, it's very hard to just give a one-size-fits-all answer, but hopefully all those tools get you to think about the particular barrier and the different types of solutions that may all need to be pulled together in a sort of different way, and it will be a very much feel your way as you go. But the overall idealistic answer to that, I'm sure everyone would agree, is that there would be an assistant that's fully funded to help with those tasks, and then sort of an occupational therapist could look at different seating and access to tables and chairs. I mean, I remember standing up in my calipers, for those who don't know, if you've seen Forrest Gump, it's the thing that locks your legs straight so you can stand up even if you've not got enough strength. And I used to have to stand up all day long in my wheelchair and at the table, and I had these big blocks that meant I could still be able to handwrite up at the sort of higher height I was stood at, but I was still, with all of my fellow classmates, and was sort of included, but stood up, albeit with this big block that enabled me to do my work as well. So it's the memories are flooding back to me now of those times. So thank you for that, Andrina. The next one was my daughter cannot go to her nearest local school, which is where most of her friends will go to next year, because it's not adapted, old building, doesn't lend itself. Again, very familiar. I went to the local primary school, and then the secondary school, mum and dad fought and went to many, many meetings and really took a lead, as I said earlier, and had the positive mindset. And I think this is one of those scenarios where you won't always get your own way. And unfortunately, I couldn't go to the local school. I had to go half an hour away on the special bus, as we used to call it, with a tail lift to get the wheelchair on. And there was 4 or so of us out in our part of the country that were taken to that other school. But I can honestly say, looking back, that I kept in touch with my friends from the local primary, and I met a lot of new friends at the other school. And because it was accessible, and because there was an actual unit that was able to give me the support both physically and sort of technologically, and there was physio and swimming, that it benefited my health as well. So as much as I was pretty much crying every day I went to school for a year and told my mum I didn't really want to go there anymore, she told me I had to stick at it, and it was the right thing, and it did work out in the end. But it was a horrible time that obviously I had to leave all my other friends behind. Someone's put people's lack of knowledge. So I think when I've got a couple of quotes from other parents, but that was one of the things when I asked a few people before that came out, is that you always know what's best for your child and you go with your gut feeling. And so as much as you need to pull in expertise, don't always let the sort of experts in inverted commas overrule you if you feel in your heart and in your gut that it's not right for your child as well. My 8-year-old goes to a special needs school. His only barrier would be if his wheelchair got damaged or has got the right chair at school. So I think probably reading between the lines that to me his child is very kind of well set up, and barring unforeseen circumstances such as broken wheelchairs, which I also remember and still have now, maybe the barriers are less so because things are already in place. So that's good to hear. Socially, access to toilets, physical support in crowded environments, space to use, K-walker and wheelchair. So I guess that almost comes back to when I talked about having not just sort of the inclusion part, but potentially that other space for the additional physio needs. So whether that's a whole unit. I mean, at my primary school, I used to go into the staff room and do my physio in the staff room when the teachers weren't in there for a lesson. So it's sort of that thinking outside the box sometimes if there isn't already something in place. Cody is coming up to start school in September, and I'm worrying about PE. If you can all remember that far back, how did you feel about sports you couldn't access? And when I was reading through, someone else said, I think it was Laura said that as well. So yeah, really good point. I remember one particular TA who was amazing, and she had the attitude that anything was possible. And I even did gym where she sort of helped me just shuffle and almost threw me around on the gym mats and the benches, and I was able to be involved. And by the way, I was quite a chubby 12-year-old as well. But equally, if there's an absolute limit where it's not possible to do, say, the gymnastics thing, then I think, from my experience, if you talk with the teachers and, the other kids are all sort of maybe aware, and that might be an outlet to have, is making sure the fellow classmates are aware and comfortable with someone's disability. But yeah, I was actually very included in PE, but only in certain sports and often in a sort of way that I had adapted it. So like badminton, I was able to hit the shuttlecock around, but not over a net. So we just sort of did it to one side, me and my TA, in a sort of closer proximity. So there's little things like that to talk about. I'm going to skim through a little bit because I'm a bit wary of the time, but yeah, obviously that you've all put lots down. It's good that you're almost just thinking and identifying the limitations and the barriers that come up. And I think I mentioned it when I went through the diagram, that there's the actual disability that your child has is a limitation, but there's still ways of overcoming activities. But the external barriers are around the physical access, the attitudes of people, and then the policies as well. So at school, I guess the policy would be if there is funding and if, things could be done different, even if it tweaks a health and safety rule. And that comes back to a quote I've got for you later. But, those three areas are the areas that need to be sort of overcome. It's the physical barriers, the attitudinal barriers, and the sort of policy, the organisational barriers. And if you can identify all of those that are in the way, then hopefully you can get more along the lines of finding solutions as well. Okay, so we're going to do it again with access in social settings. I mean, I'm not going to spend as long because I've got a couple more slides, and then there's a Q&A at the end where I say hopefully if there's more specifics once we've been through it all I can answer. But literally just spend a minute sort of jotting down the barriers that you would see to social settings, and I'd imagine they're going to be on a similar level to the ones to schools as well. But just have a quick think about that and rattle them out, and I'll just mute the microphone for a second. Okay, there's a few more still coming in, but as I said, I think that there are those broader themes that I mentioned earlier on, but then obviously, yeah, applying it to a social setting, not an educational or school setting, it throws up that kind of having additional space and access, whether that's for sort of changing in a public toilet. Someone's put about, with sort of swimming as well, the additional needs. I don't know if some of you may know, I got back in to swimming quite recently, having loved swimming as a child. I'd sort of given up on it because the school, when I left school, it kind of fell off a cliff in terms of having that provision to help me. And then the thought of needing the hoist and a bed to lie on and sort of be dried and all of that world seemed too impossible. And I'll talk about in the independent living webinar in about a month's time. But I'm actually back swimming again because there are some leisure centres that are more able to facilitate. So I think what's interesting actually is the knowledge and information that I'm sort of applying when it's to those independent living aspects and beyond into leisure and travel, almost all need cramming into this one when sort of speaking to parents. I hadn't sort of almost factored in the actual absolute amount of information to try and boil into this 1 hour. But I say all the things that you've been writing coming through at the moment, are all around the fact that there needs to be the right access, there needs to be the right attitude from the parents, from the disabled person and from the people around, like the experts and sort of fellow students and friends. Interestingly, there's a lady called Liz who I haven't seen for many, many years who's on the webinar, and she knew me when I was growing up, and we all grew up in the same village and we all know each other from a long time ago, and she's a physio and she's been writing some really interesting comments about how the parent should always be the expert, and it's the experts in inverted commas, as I've been talking about them, are the ones with the right information and skills and knowledge to take the parents' sort of say so, to then find those solutions and work with them. So I hope all these general bits of thoughts and nuggets of information are being digested and have a purpose and a sense to help you individually. Because as I said, my disability and my experiences are going to be very different from yours and your children's. Just flicking through a few more. Someone's put their daughter never gets invited for sleepovers, and noticeably not that many birthday parties, play dates. At a few parties that we've been to, you can sense that people are uncomfortable asking about disability. And I think, again, that comes back to the thing I've said about attitude. That's, almost educating people that just because someone is in a chair or whatever their disability is, that it doesn't need to become, a big issue for anyone, and they can ask you about it. And equally, every individual parent and disabled person should feel able and willing to be able to talk about that comfortably, because that's the only way that everyone can feel sort of comfortable around the whole subject. Okay, so thank you for all your really, really good lists. Obviously, I'm trying to speak and present and read them all through, so everyone gets a turn. I've seen my auntie Julie's on as well, and my two cousins, David and Neil. David is profoundly deaf and Neil has Down syndrome. So her perspectives are quite different in terms of the disability and the barriers sometimes than say my mum would have faced. But I think, and it's actually my mum's sister, but they both have a very, very similar outlook on life and, on how they've dealt with having disabled children. And I think it comes back to the fact that you overcome the barriers as much as you can, but sometimes you can't overcome them. You just work towards sort of getting around them or, working around them, even if they still stay there. And my mum's also one has just mentioned about the sibling angle, which I'm sure some of you that resonates with too. So personally, I have a younger sister, and I'm sure, you'd all be aware of the intricacies of supporting your disabled child, but also giving the attention to the sibling who doesn't maybe have a disability. So I feel like there's a million one different things that I could chat through and talk about, but I say the main thing is that you can have a bit more of a platform to think about those two settings, the importance of trying to overcome the barriers so that your disabled child is included, and obviously I say having the right mindset whereby if things don't always go right, you have a resilience and you have a positivity to still enable and facilitate your child to get out there and live the best life that they can do, really. And it won't always be easy, but it's definitely worth persevering and still sticking with it to overcome. A few people are now writing in and agreeing with that comment. So, and apparently my sister's just said that I'm a brilliant older brother. So before we get too happy clappy, I'm going to move on now to the next slide. But thank you, Claire. So from my perspective, there's a cool little picture of me rocking out with a guitar when I was God knows how young there. And then a newspaper cutting, which was when I've talked about funding. We had a lot of fundraising events in the local village, and Liz may well remember that picture as well from those days. But at all of the locals, she just said I do. All of the local people in the village helped to fund that wheelchair that I'm then driving in. So that almost comes back to how inclusion was massively important, which is point one. Because not only did I go to the local primary school and I had lots of friends who accepted me for who I was, and we've talked about obviously having the right resources and support, which was paramount too. But I think the two feed off each other because I was so included and people got on with me and liked me for Martin. They wanted to help overcome those barriers with me. So suddenly you'd find the school putting up ramps and you'd find my friends sort of would invite me to parties because over time they felt comfortable with that, and indeed raised probably about £3,000 for that particular wheelchair as well. So I think it's inclusion is the goal, and having the right resources support is also equally as important. And really it's almost the balancing act of the two. I think the overall key part as well is taking the lead. So where it's almost for those in the more officey world, you could say, it's almost project management. And it's coming back to you take the goal, you look at the problems, you find a way of overcoming them, even if they take 3 years, but you take the lead and you make sure things happen and, people don't put you off and blag you and send you the wrong way. So, and obviously mindset is key, and I think the rest will follow. And lastly, just wanted to say that always smile and rock on with the little picture of me with my guitar there as well. So what parents have said, as a few people I've talked to through the Jennifer Trust, which is a charity for my disability. Caroline was on the board when I was a trustee there. You can read what she's read, but basically she thinks one of the key areas for parents is in challenging the information that's given and not accepting advice from professionals as always the right advice. The mantra for her is if it doesn't sound right, it probably isn't, and that don't sort of let them use health and safety. And apology, Liz, if I'm using the word them in a derogatory sense, but I think you agree with this too, that, the parent is the expert and that there are sometimes that common sense should prevail and things like health and safety shouldn't always be a barrier. It's just something to reduce risk, and that actually everyone encounters risks every day, disabled people or not, and that would come into school trips and doing sports. So while there's maybe an element for some parents or teachers and professionals to wrap a child in cotton wool, and even more so when they have a disability, I think there's a little bit about people being able to live life and take risks. And I remember when I was about I think it was about 4 or 5, I was playing with a toy kitchen and I fell off the sofa and I broke my leg, and it was bloody painful. It wasn't very pleasant, but they're the sort of things that I had to learn, that if you lean too far forward you fall off the sofa, and it's about sometimes that will happen, but as long as it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger. So as I mentioned, sorry if that sounded a bit harsh, but you get the point. My mum said, when you're blessed with a disabled child, always look for the positives of what they can do and not what they can't. Life can be challenging. There's many hoops to jump through and hurdles to jump. You will normally find a way around it, and a cheerful disposition does help, which I know that her and my dad have both instilled in me a lot, that can-do attitude. And finally, I mentioned my Auntie Julie with having David and Neil, my two cousins with disabilities, that many professionals would give advice based on their study of a condition, but everyone is an individual, and as a parent you know your child and what they're capable of. Never say can't, always say can try, which I thought really summed that up nicely. So why do it? Well, there's a nice picture of myself with my mum, my dad and my sister outside Coventry Cathedral on my graduation day, which was a few years ago now. But essentially all those things I've shared with you and tried to help make a bit of sense of. But I think, as I keep coming back to, you have to make sense of that and apply it in your own way. But that the actual purpose of it is that I've been able to go on and graduate and do all sorts of other things. So thank you for listening. It's your turn to ask any questions now. And obviously there's my contact details, so if you, after the event, want to email me or follow me on Twitter, or you haven't seen my blog, magazine as well, we're relaunching Disability Horizons magazine on Monday, and we've got a celebrity question and answer, so I'm doing all the plugs now. But yeah, we've got a few minutes, I think, that if you want to ask any particular questions, I'll do my best to help you. Hopefully it's just a period of while people are typing away or having a bit of a think and digesting. But give yourself a couple of minutes. We've got 15 minutes, so have a bit of a think and grab a drink if you want to, and then come back with some questions. And then if anything comes up after past, as I say, you can still email me after the event anyway. Liz just put, as a professional, I so agree with all those comments. I learnt this when I had my own children at the same time and thought, goodness, how dare anyone think they know more than me about them? So that's a cool insight as well. Thank you, Liz. Interesting why, and this isn't a plant, but my mum just put, looking back over the years, is there anything that has truly, truly upset you over something you could not do? I think, yeah, definitely there would have been times, and I know when I've talked with my mum and dad about how to present this hour and the things to try and cover, the key matter was not to come across like, I'm doing things now that obviously I'm proud of. I know my family are proud of me too, but that it make it sound like it was all easy, or that it's an untouchable achievement, because I think actually there were lots of difficult times that I had to overcome, and mum and dad and Claire as well would agree with that. So yeah, one of the things particularly would be probably playing football. I always wanted to go up and play for Tottenham. Well, not everyone wants to play for Tottenham, but I wanted to play for Tottenham and England, and obviously the realisation, the barrier that I wouldn't be able to play football because of my disability was a negative. But then, as Laura will know, I actually was lucky enough to play for 6 months, play wheelchair football, which was an amazing experience. And it was cool that my dad got to come along and watch me play football. And also another thing around the football was when I was younger, even though I didn't play in the local team, like the club team, me and my dad used to run the line, and my dad would charge up and down the touchline with me in my manual wheelchair, and I would hold the flag and he would hold his hanky, because the referee couldn't always see me because I couldn't lift my arm up very high. But yeah, I had other ways of being involved as well. So the football did probably truly upset me, but equally again we did find ways over it. Stacey said, did you ever see your mum upset? Yeah. Me and my mum have a very close and open relationship, and my mum has definitely been upset in front of me, but I think as long as it didn't make me feel bad about something or make me feel on a downer, it was probably a positive, because we're all a family. We all accept the difficulties and the challenges, but equally for every time she or I or anyone got a bit despondent or had a bit of a cry, we'd bounce up the next day and crack back on with overcoming it again. So Samir, but how do you keep it professional when dealing with experts and not get too emotional? Really good question there. I remember when I moved to Hackney, they were offering a care package that would just not have enabled me to have the level of care. And so I was there as this 20-something-year-old, man by that stage. And this, I'm talking from my personal experience, not as sort of relaying it to a parent, but I think it applies. Basically, I was trying to calmly and logically say, I can't get out of my chair, I can't roll at night, I can't use the shower myself. And how can you expect me to live independently in London with this very small amount of money in my social care package? And I think that was really, really difficult. And I think the answer to that question, Samia, is actually it's around advocacy. So I think if something is getting a bit difficult and almost, the emotions are coming in and you're getting frustrated, it might be a point to go to, an advocate, and you can Google disability advocates, and people like Scope can offer that help as well. I know from working there, where someone else can almost take your case and look at the steps that you need to take to get the support that you need. So I think try yourself and try to stay calm and, explain things gently, but you will always get sometimes where for whatever reason it's not working out, and then you go to plan B, which is to get someone from a neutral perspective to speak on your behalf. So Andrina's put, it's very frustrating with professionals having limited advice to offer us. If we don't feel what they are offering will help or improve the situation, they seem to show disinterest and fail to provide us with alternatives. Our grandson has cerebral palsy, and all they seem to want to offer are leg splints, which after 2 sets of splints and special boots, they have proved of no benefit. The physio cannot offer us an alternative, it seems, and we are considering a trip to America for SDR at tremendous cost. Yeah, also I don't know your particular circumstances and all the things around that, but maybe it is if you feel that the individual who's not providing the support you would hope for is just not working out, then again it's maybe to look to an advocate or to look for a second opinion and that kind of thing. Or, indeed, maybe don't even go to professionals, but a bit like you are today, go to other people in a similar situation and ask what they did, because you'll often find that disabled people and their families, as we've said already, are the experts as well in those situations. So Liz has put, I think that you need to do these for, around, sorry Liz, I'm just reading through what you're talking about, but almost sort of trying to raise the awareness of what I've been saying in other forums, if that's correct. So I'm just sort of skipping through, there's quite a few questions. But yeah, I think you're right. If there's someone such as myself speaking to a group of professionals, it might resonate a bit more, the actual point of how to interact with disabled people and their families. Laura's saying get back into it and come and play for Reading. I wish I had enough time at the moment, Laura. I'm 6 weeks into self-employment. It's bloody crazy, but once things calm down, it would be lovely to get back in and play again. I do miss playing football a lot, actually. My mum was just saying about how I used to play football with my stepbrothers and whack them around the ankles. Laura said, what work experience did you do when in year 10, and did a TA go with you? Now, I think I didn't do it because I had my spinal fusion. So it was about May time when I was in year 10, and I was in Stanmore Hospital for 3 months after 2 operations and 2 titanium rods and a load of nuts and bolts. So I was a little bit waylaid on temazepam and morphine that period. So I can't answer that question directly. But actually, in terms of general work experience, I did in the local town I grew up in sort of later on, it was a town I moved to, St Ives. There was an estate agent, and I just went in when I was at uni. I went around one summer and knew that I needed some work experience on my CV. And I'll probably talk a bit more about this in the teenager one as well, because obviously that's quite relevant to that age group. But no, I went in on my own, and someone, like my mum or someone, would come and meet me to help me nip to the toilet. And the people in the office were very supportive and helpful to get a drink or whatever it might have been. And I'm quite self-sufficient on a computer. So, I think there's a lot of worries people have about that, but it's, again, partly you understand the limitations, but you have to have a confidence that you can do a lot more than you realise, and then you sort of work the rest out. But as I say, we'll talk a lot more about that in 2 weeks, the one for teenagers as well. Julie put, as children, you and David worked together. He would walk through to me and you would voice what you both wanted. A perfect team. You both worked to your strengths, a good philosophy that you have carried into adulthood. So for those that didn't pick up, he's 3 months older than me, he's my cousin. When we grew up, and obviously there was different developments. So David would have been running around and I was sort of sat on my bum being lazy, and it later turned out to be SMA. And then meanwhile, I'd have been quite alert to the noises, whereas David couldn't hear them. And I think, yeah, Julie's absolutely right. We definitely did bounce off each other. And I remember having a sleepover and having a load of teddies lined up on my bed so I could throw them at his head to wake him up so he could then turn me over. So it's quite a nice little story, actually, of me and David. Stacey put, what activities do you remember doing as a family? I remember going to London. I remember going on an open top bus for, I think it was my 9th birthday, so I'd assume my dad would have lifted me up onto the top deck of the bus, and we did all the sights of London. We went to museums and swimming a lot because my mum's also a swimming teacher and I've been swimming since I was about 4 years old. And Stacey's put that included you and your sister. So yeah, Claire would have been at all of those with me as well. I mean, obviously there's times where you would do separate things with different children because of interest anyway. So Mum might take Claire shopping and Dad might take me to the football. But equally, yeah, we definitely did a lot as a family as well. So I'm just scrolling down. So they put own homework helps. Attending disabilities shows help, like Kids, South, North, Middle and NAIDEX. Yeah, so I think that's it. That comes back. And once I've written this ebook, I hope you will have a read because it's that diagram I showed you is actually a little bit more complex than the way I described it. Not it's difficult to understand. It just needs a bit more explanation. And that whole thing about information and knowledge being a key tool feeds into what Samir has just said. Because, yeah, if you attend certain roadshows and exhibitions, then you're going to be up to date with all of that information. So Andrina's saying about how myself and my family are an inspiration, so thank you for that. Apart from my family, did you ever have anyone to turn to when you yourself felt depressed, and did you ever feel depressed? Yes, absolutely. I'm not going to pretend like I've never felt down and bothered about any of this stuff. And yeah, because I was so, included from day dot, I'm still today good friends with people that were in my reception class. And then obviously, throughout I've met new people at secondary school, new people at uni. And so, yeah, I am fortunate maybe that I have got those people, but I think the biggest message I really want to get across with this webinar is that, sort of there's a lot of around personality and situations that the sort of environment of the local school and local community that all, maybe feel like can't be moulded. But I do believe that if you start from the beginning with a positive attitude and you aim for the best scenario, even if it is difficult or not totally possible, you're going to be on a much better footing than you would if you got overcome by negativity from the off. And that will then feed off things and move forward in a possible way. My mum's just put, you did do work experience at a later stage and then you went on your own. Yeah, that was what I was saying about, I think probably I've just got to the questions from 5 minutes ago. But that was the one to do with the estate agent. And Gina put, did you go to the beach? And if so, how did you manage your wheelchair on the sand? So a little bit like I've mentioned how the later things maybe I'm trying to feed into one go. But by all means, you can all attend the other webinars anyway. But when I talk about travel, which is the 5th webinar, that will be, you'll totally see about how I love holidays and going on the beach. And Liz has just put the Portuguese have wonderful sand beach wheelchairs, and I was just going to say Tenerife as well. So when I nip off for some winter sun, because I get bad chest infections and things like that in the winter, then yeah, basically, you know, there are ways. I think probably way back I would have got carried onto the sand, and obviously for a long while I used a buggy or a manual wheelchair too. But now I tend to stay in my electric wheelchair. But yeah, there are ways of getting on a wooden board to get you more out into the middle of the sand with the family near the sea, not sort of sat up on the pier on your own with your ice cream, which is always good. Samia's put, would you give talks to parents forum groups? Yep, definitely. This is why, you know, I was so sad to leave Skype, but my role was in fundraising, and it was very sort of office based, and I'm so keen to use my blog and the magazine and new media, social media, to sort of spread this general message. And I in fact did a talk today to service providers of care in Hackney, and they're very worried about personal budgets and how the future of their businesses are going to look. And I've sort of said, you know, obviously you need a sustainable business model, but the way you get that is by talking to disabled people about what they want and then providing those services for them. And that way disabled people are getting the right provision, and they as individuals or as businesses are happy because, you know, that they're going the right way as well. Liz has just put their roll on big balls. I'm assuming that refers to the wheelchair on the beach. Thank you. Yep, she's just confirmed that. So yeah, I think in terms of the questions, we're coming to an end, and it is 31 minutes past, which is fantastic timing. I hope you all enjoyed that. The technology was okay. You got something helpful out of it in some way. And yeah, as I said, stay in touch. By all means, sign up to the other ones as well. And yeah, let's just keep in touch, really. But if you want to sign up to my blog, if you go to martinsibby.com, you can put your email, and then it will email you the blogs that I upload about once or twice a week. And some of them are quite serious, and some of them are videos and things where I'm doing more silly stuff. But I think that's important as well to show, you know, not just disabled people, but the rest of the world, that someone with a disability can achieve, but also have a stupid sense of, you know, humour and have fun in life as well. So yeah, thank you for your kind messages coming on now. I'm going to sign off and get a big drink of water because my voice is going. But I'll see you all soon. Bye bye.